Imagine having the exact same complaints you have today, right? Like being entirely too busy.
Oh, yeah, the constant grind.
Exactly. Feeling just, completely overwhelmed by an endless stream of information
Mm-hmm.
and suffering from that quiet, agonizing realization that you just never have any time for yourself.
Right, that nagging feeling.
Yeah. Now imagine having all of those complaints, feeling that exact same burnout, but the year is 1910.
Which is just wild to think about.
It's totally wild. So today we're doing a deep dive into a man who basically diagnosed modern burnout decades before the internet.
Way before the smartphone, before the 5-day work week was even a standard thing.
Right. So we have this stack of material we're looking at, and it's centered entirely around one surprisingly timeless and honestly kind of hilarious manifesto.
It really is funny.
It's by a guy named Arnold Bennett, and it's called How to Live on 24 Hours a Day.
Such a great title.
It is. And the mission for this deep dive, just to be clear up front, isn't to give you some shallow life hacks.
No, definitely not.
Right. We're going to unpack this century-old blueprint because it is shockingly accurate at describing the time famine we're all, currently starving in.
Yeah, that time famine is real.
So real.
Yeah.
And we want to extract his highly practical method for actually conquering it.
And, the historical context of this text is really what makes it so incredibly compelling.
Oh, absolutely. Set the stage for us. Who was this guy?
So Arnold Bennett was this absolute powerhouse of the early 20th century.
Okay.
He was an English novelist, a really prolific journalist, a magazine editor.
So he's busy.
Incredibly busy, and he eventually became the director of propaganda for France during the First World War.
Wow. Okay, so he wasn't just sitting around.
No, by any definition, this was a man who understood exactly what it meant to have zero free time.
Right.
And he lived during this period of rapid expansion. The London Underground was exploding.
Right, the tube.
Yeah, daily newspapers were everywhere. The
Yeah.
telegraph was taking off. It was this period where the speed of life just suddenly accelerated exponentially.
Like a massive technological shift.
Exactly. And he saw people commuting, rushing around, skimming the news, and basically just collapsing at the end of the day.
Which sounds incredibly familiar.
Right. He recognized that the exhaustion of the modern worker, it isn't really a technological condition.
What is it then?
Well, he argues it's a deeply psychological human condition.
Man. So, if you're listening to this right now, yes, you, whether you're on your commute or, washing dishes or pretending to work while looking at a spreadsheet.
We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. I want to set a very clear expectation for you. We aren't going to talk about batching your emails today.
No email hacks here.
Right, and we aren't going to discuss, meal prepping on Sundays to save 30 minutes a week.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Bennett is demanding something much more radical. He's asking for a complete philosophical shift in how you view the fundamental currency of your existence.
Which sounds intense, but it's brilliant.
It really is.
Yeah.
He wants to change your relationship with time from the ground up, starting with this concept he introduces called the daily miracle.
The daily miracle. Yeah. And to understand this, it requires completely discarding that old proverb, the one that says time is money.
Right, time is money. We hear that constantly.
Constantly. But Bennett argues that comparing time to money is fundamentally flawed.
Oh, so.
Because it drastically understates the actual value of time. I mean, time is the inexplicable raw material of everything.
Okay, yeah.
Money, on the other hand, is actually quite common. He says it encumbers the earth in gross heaps.
Gross heaps. I love his language.
It's so good. But think about it. If you run out of money, there are mechanisms to get more, right?
Right. You can earn it.
You can earn it, borrow it, inherit it.
You could beg for it, yeah.
Exactly. But time operates on an entirely different set of physical and economic laws.
You can't borrow an hour from tomorrow.
No, it cannot be earned, and it certainly cannot be hoarded.
So he has this amazing analogy to illustrate the absolute unshakable democracy of time.
Oh, the Carlton Hotel one.
Yes. And it just highlights how bizarre our relationship with time really is.
Go for it. Lay it out.
So he points out that even if you possess the wealth of a cloakroom attendant at the Carlton Hotel.
Which, side note, apparently in 1910 London, that was the absolute pinnacle of rolling in ungodly amounts of cash.
Right, which is just a funny historical detail. But even if you have all that wealth, all of that money cannot buy you one single minute more of time than, say, the cat sleeping by the fire.
It's so true. The billionaire gets 24 hours.
And the stray cat gets 24 hours.
It is the ultimate equalizing force in the universe. There's no aristocracy of intellect or wealth in the realm of time.
Right, doesn't matter who you are.
Exactly. A profound genius does not get rewarded with an extra hour a day just for being brilliant.
Which is probably a good thing.
Oh, definitely. And conversely, if you're foolish and you completely squander your day in a series of terrible decisions...
Which, happens to the best of us.
Right, but there's no mysterious punitive power that cuts off your supply at the meter.
Right, you don't get punished by having tomorrow shortened to 20 hours.
Exactly. Time is perfectly egalitarian. Furthermore, and this is the aspect Bennett finds most comforting, you cannot draw on the future.
Meaning you can't go into time debt.
Right. It is physically impossible. You can waste the passing moment, absolutely, but you cannot waste tomorrow.
Because tomorrow hasn't happened yet.
Tomorrow is kept perfectly unspoiled for you. Every single morning, your purse is magically, miraculously filled with exactly 24 hours of the unmanufactured tissue of the universe.
Unmanufactured tissue of the universe. It's just a stunning way to describe like a random Tuesday morning.
It really elevates it, doesn't it?
It does. You wake up and you are handed 24 brand new, pristine hours free of charge.
Free of charge.
And yet, how many of us actually live on 24 hours a day? Right, because Bennett makes a very sharp distinction here between actually living and just existing, or kind of muddling through.
The muddling through is the problem.
Yeah, because when we just muddle through our days, we become haunted by this thing he calls the skeleton at the feast.
Ugh, the skeleton at the feast. That phrase perfectly encapsulates the psychological toll of mismanaged time.
It really does. What does he mean by it exactly?
Well, if we analyze that nagging feeling we experience at the end of a really busy day.
Like that hollow dissatisfaction.
Exactly. Bennett diagnoses it primarily as a feeling of uneasy expectation. It's this feeling of unfulfilled aspiration.
Okay, so like we should be doing more.
Right. We all possess this baseline sense that we ought to be doing something more with our lives than simply, earning a paycheck and maintaining our physical survival.
Right, just paying the bills and eating dinner.
Yeah, and when we consistently ignore that aspiration, it metamorphoses into this metaphorical skeleton that just follows us around.
So creepy, but so accurate.
Right. You go to the theater to relax, and between the acts, this skeleton raises a skinny finger at you.
Just judging you.
You're waiting on the platform for the morning train, and it paces up and down beside you asking, what are you doing with your youth? What are you doing with your age?
Okay, I have to pause you there because I want to challenge this premise on behalf of the listener.
Okay, let's hear it.
Does everyone actually possess these grand burning ambitions?
Whoa!
Because what if someone listening right now is thinking, actually, I'm perfectly content going to my job, coming home, eating dinner, and watching a screen until I fall asleep.
Sure, the couch potato defense.
Right. Like, I don't want to write a novel. I don't want to learn Mandarin. Surely not everyone is plagued by this skeleton.
Fair question.
And Bennett uses this geographical analogy to address this, right? The Mecca versus Brixton analogy.
Yeah.
But does it really hold up?
I think it holds up brilliantly because Bennett isn't actually arguing that everyone must have world-conquering ambitions.
Okay.
He uses the analogy of a man desiring to go to Mecca.
Yeah.
His conscience, his inner drive, tells him he should make the journey. Now, he might set out, face insurmountable obstacles, and literally drown in the Red Sea along the way.
Which is a terrible outcome.
Horrible! His desire remains eternally frustrated. But Bennett points out a crucial distinction here.
What's that?
That man will not be tormented in the same agonizing way as the man who intensely desires to reach Mecca, but never even takes a cab out of Brixton to start the journey.
Brixton being just a standard everyday neighborhood in London.
Yes, exactly. It represents the absolute bare minimum of our daily routine.
Okay, so the program.
The program.
Yeah.
Eating, sleeping, earning a living. And the aspiration to exceed that basic life program is actually a biological and psychological sign of evolutionary growth.
Okay, so it's hardwired into us.
Yes. If you possess any intellectual curiosity whatsoever, that desire to overstep the boundaries of your formal program is going to be present.
You can't escape it.
You can try, you might suppress it, you might drown it in entertainment, binge watching TV or whatever.
Right.
But it remains. And until you make a genuine, structured effort to satisfy it, that skeleton will always be there, just disturbing the peace of your soul.
Wow. So the guilt you feel when you're like 3 hours deep into a social media spiral.
We've all been there.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
And that little voice whispers, you said you were going to learn how to play the guitar this year.
That's the skeleton.
That is the skeleton. That is the evolutionary desire to grow, just knocking on the door of your Brixton apartment.
Exactly.
So the obvious question follows, right? If we all get exactly 24 hours, and we all have this deep-seated evolutionary desire to do something more, where is the time actually going?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Because if we accept the premise, we have to look at the structural flaw in how we view our days.
Yes.
And Bennett profiles the typical London clerk, like the standard 10 to 6 worker.
Yeah.
And he identifies what he calls their great and profound mistake.
And this mistake is entirely one of perspective.
How so?
Well, Bennett argues it ruins 2/3 of the person's energy. Yeah. Consider the typical worker, and we can easily map his 1910 clerk onto the modern 9-to-5 office worker.
Or even the remote worker at home.
Oh, especially the remote worker.
Yeah.
They spend about 8 hours working. And in the vast majority of cases, they do not possess a burning, passionate love for their employment.
Right. It's a job.
At best, they tolerate it. They arrive as late as they reasonably can without being fired.
Yeah, logging on to Slack at exactly 8:59.
Exactly. And they leave with profound joy as early as they can. But here is the tragedy of their perspective.
Okay.
They persist in looking at those 8 working hours as the day.
Oh, wow. They define their entire existence by the hours they spend making money for someone else.
Exactly. And the consequence of that definition is severe.
I can imagine.
Because they treat the 10 hours preceding work and the 6 hours following work as nothing but a prologue and an epilogue.
Just filler.
It is mere margin to be got through. Bennett points out the mathematical absurdity of this.
Right. Do the math.
If you make 2/3 of your existence entirely subservient to 1/3, a third, that you don't even have a feverish zest for, how can you possibly hope to live fully?
You can't.
You are structurally guaranteeing your own dissatisfaction.
It is the exact trap of the weekend warrior culture.
Yes.
It's that mindset that says your real life only happens on Saturday and Sunday, or, during those 2 weeks of PTO in August.
Right. The rest is just waiting.
The rest of your life is just time spent in the waiting room.
Exactly.
But Bennett offers a structural solution to this, and it requires a brilliant mental reframing.
The inner day.
Yes. He introduces the concept of the inner day, and he describes it like a Chinese box, like a smaller box nested securely inside a larger one.
The 24-hour day is the larger box.
Okay.
The inner day is a specific 16-hour box carved out within it.
Right.
It begins the moment you finish work, say at 6 p.m., and it ends at 10 a.m. the next morning when you begin work again.
So it's everything outside of work.
Everything. And Bennett insists that during these 16 hours, you must view yourself as a completely free person.
A free person.
You are not a wage earner during these hours. You are not defined by your professional title or your monetary cares.
Okay, I love that.
For these 16 hours, you are, for all intents and purposes, an aristocrat with an independent income.
An aristocrat.
Yes. And your only objective during this inner day is to cultivate your body, your soul, and your fellow men.
Okay, I have to step in here and throw a massive red flag on the play.
Uh-oh.
Because I'm looking at this through the eyes of a modern listener. A listener who commutes an hour each way, manages a household, and deals with, constant digital pinging from everyone.
The notifications never stop.
Never. When I get home at 6:30 p.m., I am physically, mentally, and emotionally fried.
Completely drained.
I am not an aristocrat with an independent income. I am a burnt-out husk trying to decide if it's socially acceptable to eat cereal for dinner again.
We've all had the cereal dinner.
Right. So telling me to suddenly pivot to cultivating my immortal soul sounds completely detached from the reality of modern fatigue.
It sounds incredibly out of touch.
It really does.
Until you examine the actual physiology and psychology of that fatigue, which Bennett actually tackles head on.
Oh, he does.
Yeah. He addresses the whole "I'm too tired" excuse with a brutal but necessary honesty.
I'm bracing myself.
So first, he observes that most people do not actually run their engines at full horsepower during their working hours.
Ouch.
Right. They put as little of themselves as they conscientiously can into earning a livelihood. Their vocation bores them rather than exhausts them.
Okay, I'm going to push back on that too.
Okay, let's hear it.
That might have been true for a clerk moving paper in 1910, but what about the modern worker?
You mean the stress?
Yeah, what about cortisol? If my boss is micromanaging me or I'm dealing with angry clients all day on Zoom, my nervous system is flooded with stress hormones. That isn't just boredom. That is a tangible chemical exhaustion. It feels physically identical to running a marathon.
I am so glad you brought up the physical sensation because that highlights Bennett's central breakthrough regarding the nature of mental fatigue.
Okay, enlighten me.
He argues that mental faculties do not tire in the same way an arm or a leg tires.
How so?
If you run that marathon, your leg muscles undergo micro tears.
Right, you need recovery.
Exactly. The muscle tissue is physically depleted of glycogen and requires biological rest to rebuild. The brain does not work that way.
It doesn't.
No. The mental faculties are capable of continuous hard activity. What they require is change, not rest.
Change, not rest. Except for sleep, obviously.
Except for sleep, obviously. The cortisol spike you mentioned is totally real, but it is tied to the context of the stress.
Okay.
If you change the context, you change the neurochemistry.
So you're saying the exhaustion is real, but it is localized to the specific activity of work.
Precisely. And Bennett gives a fantastic, undeniable, real-world example that proves this mechanism.
What's the example?
He points out how a supposedly exhausted person, someone who comes home pale, drained, and complaining about the heavy burden of the day.
It's like me before my cereal dinner.
Right. They will suddenly discover boundless, overflowing energy if something they actually desire to do is placed on the schedule.
Oh. Yes, the theater example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you arrange to go to the theater, especially with someone whose company you genuinely enjoy, what happens to that paralyzing fatigue?
It vanishes.
It vanishes. You rush home to the suburbs, you miraculously find the physical energy to dress up, you rush back into the city on another train, you keep your attention sharply stretched for 4 or 5 hours at the show, and you travel all the way back.
That's so true.
Suddenly, the fatigue is completely forgotten. He also mentions people who join amateur operatic societies and happily slave away for 2 hours every other night without a single yawn.
Because they want to be there.
Because the energy was always there. The dopamine of anticipation and the novelty of a new task completely overrode the localized fatigue of the workday.
Man, that is incredibly confronting.
It's a mirror being held up, for sure.
Because it means the tired feeling is often just a virtuous, melancholy cloud we manufacture to justify our own inertia.
Exactly. We use it as an excuse.
If we have something definite and exciting to look forward to, something that employs a completely different neural pathway, it actually provides a glow and an intense vitality to the entire day.
It fuels you.
So you aren't systematically exhausted. Your current routine is just understimulating.
The profound implication here is that the energy exists within you right now. It is purely a matter of direction.
Direction, okay.
When people come home, potter around, scroll on their phones, look at the clock, and spend 40 minutes just thinking about going to bed,
Which is the worst feeling.
they aren't resting. They're existing in a state of suspended animation. Bennett asserts the man who takes 40 minutes to go to bed is bored, which means he is not truly living.
Okay, let's operationalize this.
Let's do it.
We've established that we possess this 16-hour inner day and that the too tired excuse is largely a psychological illusion.
Right.
How do we practically execute this time budget? Where do we actually find the unbroken hours to start exceeding our program?
We have to find the time somewhere.
Bennett suggests we must start at the very beginning of the inner day, which, for him, paradoxically, is the morning.
Which people hate to hear.
They really do. And he gives this wildly specific advice for circumventing the chaos of the morning rush, waking up 90 minutes earlier.
And he completely anticipates the immediate visceral protests from his readers.
Oh, I'm already protesting.
Right. People say, I cannot wake up earlier, I need my sleep. And besides, the house is asleep. Who will make my breakfast?
Which is a very 1910 problem.
Very. Remember, he's writing for a middle-class audience who relied heavily on domestic servants to start the household fires and boil water.
Wow, different times.
But to avoid relying on servants, or in modern terms, to avoid waking up your spouse, your children, or your roommates, Bennett insists on a philosophy of extreme self-reliance.
Extreme self-reliance.
He outlines a highly specific environmental setup that must be prepared the night before.
I have to read his exact setup because it is a masterclass in what modern productivity experts would call reducing friction.
It really is Atomic Habits from a century ago.
Totally. So he tells the reader to buy a spirit lamp, which is essentially a little alcohol-burning camping stove, and a saucepan.
Okay.
He says, put a tray out overnight. On the tray, 2 biscuits, a cup and saucer, a box of matches, the spirit lamp, the saucepan, and the saucepan lid turned upside down.
The upside-down lid is key.
Right. On the reversed lid, place a small teapot containing a minute quantity of tea leaves.
Precision engineering.
Then, when you wake up early, all you have to do is strike a single match. 3 minutes later, the water boils. 3 more minutes, the tea is infused.
Yeah.
And you begin your day in perfect solitude while drinking it.
While the spirit lamp sounds quaint, the underlying psychological strategy is incredibly sophisticated.
How so?
It is identical to James Clear's advice about designing your environment to make the desired behavior the path of least resistance.
Make the good habit easy.
Right. Bennett writes, "The proper, wise balancing of one's whole life may depend upon the feasibility of a cup of tea at an unusual hour."
That is a great quote.
He is arguing that if you want to reclaim your time, you must engineer your physical space to remove all decision fatigue.
You can't rely on willpower.
Exactly. You cannot let your highest intellectual welfare depend on the precarious cooperation of another human being, or even on your own willpower at 5:30 in the morning. You take extreme ownership of your environment the night before.
And to the people who scream, "But I need my sleep, my body demands 8 hours."
Oh, he has an answer for them.
He goes straight to his doctor. He asks a doctor in a flourishing London suburb about the actual sleep requirements of the average office worker, and the doctor delivers this incredibly curt, devastating answer.
I love this quote.
He says, "Most people sleep themselves stupid."
Sleep themselves stupid.
Bennett compares the average clerk's sleep needs to the driver of a Carter Patterson's van.
Which was the equivalent of a modern Amazon delivery driver or a UPS worker doing heavy, continuous manual labor.
Right, running up and down stairs.
A person carrying heavy boxes all day requires extensive physical recovery. A person sitting at a desk moving information does not require the same biological rest.
So why do we sleep so much?
We sleep as long as we do, Bennett argues, simply because we are at a loss for any other interesting diversion. We use sleep as an escape from the humdrum, not as a biological necessity.
We're just bored, so we go to sleep.
Exactly.
So, okay, you've conquered the mattress, you've woken up 90 minutes earlier, you struck the match, had your solitary cup of tea, and gained a massive chunk of your inner day.
A huge win.
Next, Bennett turns his attention to the commute. This is where he identifies a massive daily robbery of time.
The commute is brutal.
In 1910, people walked to the train station, waited on the platform, and took the train into the city. Today, it's the subway, the bus, or just sitting in gridlock traffic on the highway.
He observes people commuting and declares they are walking around in a condition of mental coma.
Mental coma.
He compares the act of waiting idly for the train to exchanging a gold coin, a sovereign, and letting the train company charge you a fee just to make change.
Just literally throwing wealth away.
You are giving away minutes of your one and only life for absolutely free. Hundreds of thousands of hours are lost collectively every single day simply because people refuse to take basic precautions against losing time.
And here's where Bennett lays down one of his most stringent, uncompromising rules.
A big rule.
It's one that directly challenges the deeply ingrained habits of his era and perfectly maps onto the worst habits of ours.
What does he command?
He commands, no reading newspapers on the morning train.
It is a shocking prohibition, especially considering Bennett openly admits he is an impassioned, addicted reader of newspapers himself.
Right, he wasn't a hater.
No, he confesses to reading 5 English and 2 French dailies every day.
That's a lot of news.
But he remains adamant that the morning commute is far too sacred to be sacrificed to the newspaper.
Why, though? What is the inherent danger of the news during that specific window of time? I mean, shouldn't a modern, cultivated person be informed about the world before they get to the office?
Well, Bennett's reasoning is that newspapers are structurally designed to be produced with rapidity, and therefore they are designed to be read with rapidity.
Fast consumption.
They scatter your attention across a dozen unrelated, often sensational topics.
So it fragments your focus.
Exactly. They are perfect for odd throwaway moments later in the day, but devoting 30 or 40 consecutive minutes of wonderful, rested morning solitude to skimming a news is a tragedy.
A tragedy.
He calls it scattering priceless pearls of time with oriental lavishness. You are not the Shah of time. You do not possess a surplus of mental energy to waste on fragmented information.
The modern equivalent is so glaringly obvious it almost hurts.
Doom scrolling.
Reading the newspaper on the 1910 train is the exact same behavioral loop as doom scrolling social media, checking the algorithmic news feed, or immediately opening your work email inbox the second you sit down on the subway.
It's identical.
You are voluntarily taking your freshest, most potent mental energy of the day and fracturing it into 1,000 useless pieces. You are letting someone else's agenda hijack your brain before you've even arrived at your desk.
So true. So if we are fiercely protecting our attention and refusing to read the news, What are we supposed to do on the commute?
Right, we can't just stare at the wall.
This is where Bennett introduces his mind control exercises. And honestly, this is one of the most powerful, practical sections of the entire manifesto.
I love this part.
He dictates that the very first business of the day must be to put the mind through its paces.
Because he points out a glaring hypocrisy in how we treat ourselves.
We're very hypocritical.
We spend immense amounts of time and money looking after our physical bodies, right?
Yeah.
We bathe, we shave, we carefully select our clothes, we curate our diets.
We go to the gym.
Exactly. But we completely ignore the delicate, complex machinery of the mind.
Bennett argues that true life is utterly impossible without the power to concentrate, the power to dictate a task to your brain and ensure its absolute obedience.
Absolute obedience.
He states a philosophical truth. Nothing happens to us outside our own brain.
It's all internal.
All pleasure, all pain, all frustration, all joy exists solely within the confines of your skull. Therefore, establishing control over what goes on in there is of supreme existential importance.
Okay, how do we actually execute this mental dominance?
Practically speaking.
Right. He says no tools are required. As you leave your house and walk to the station, or as you drive to work, you simply concentrate your mind on a single subject. Just one.
Sounds easy enough.
But he provides a very necessary reality check. He warns that you won't go 10 yards before your mind is skipped away and is, as he puts it, larking around the corner with another subject.
Larking around the corner is such a brilliant, evocative phrase. The untrained mind is exactly like an undisciplined, hyperactive puppy.
It really is. It just wanders off.
And Bennett's instruction for dealing with this puppy is simple, though intensely difficult. Bring it back by the scruff of the neck.
Just drag it back.
You will have to do this 40 times before you even reach the station. Your mind will rebel. It will try to think about what you are having for lunch or an argument you had yesterday.
Like, did I leave the stove on?
Exactly. You must forcefully drag it back to the chosen subject. You must not despair, and you must persevere. Because, as he proves, you actually do possess the capacity for intense, unbroken concentration.
He provides this aha moment that completely validates his method. He asks the reader to recall a time they received a really disquieting urgent letter.
Like an email from a furious client.
Or a text with bad news that demanded a carefully worded, immediate answer. You probably kept your mind steadily on the subject of that answer, obsessively drafting it in your head without a single second's break all the way to the office.
Right, you didn't check social media.
You immediately sat down and wrote it. Why are you suddenly able to focus? Because circumstances roused your vitality and you dominated your mind like a tyrant.
You forced it.
You insisted the intellectual work be done, and it was.
This raises a profoundly important question. Why wait for a crisis to harness that power?
Why let stress be the trigger?
Right. Why let external stress be the only thing that focuses your mind? By practicing concentration daily on a chosen subject, you can learn to tyrannize over your mind anytime you wish.
That's a superpower.
He suggests a specific subject to concentrate on. A short chapter of Stoic philosophy, perhaps Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, read the night before.
Okay, Stoicism.
But the truth is, the specific subject doesn't matter nearly as much as the discipline of the practice itself. You can do this while walking or while strap hanging on the subterranean train.
Nobody around you knows you are engaged in intense mental conditioning.
Exactly. And the ultimate payoff of this mind control exercise isn't just that you become better at reading philosophy, it is about curing the uniquely modern disease of worry. Because when you strip it down, what is worry, really?
What is it?
Worry is simply an undisciplined mind. It is your brain continually larking around the corner, obsessively circling things you cannot control.
That is so profound.
It is a failure of mental boundary setting. If you can force your mind to focus entirely on a specific, chosen subject for 30 minutes, you gain the superpower to turn your attention away from worry at will.
Just switch it off.
You cure half the evils of life simply by getting your mind in hand.
That is a staggering return on investment for a morning commute.
Huge ROI.
So we've successfully dominated our minds on the way to work. We arrive, we put in our 8 hours of labor, hopefully with a bit more intentionality. Then we hit the evening commute.
The journey home.
If the morning is for harnessing the mind's raw focus, the evening journey home is for applying that newly sharpened focus to the most important subject of all.
The reflective mood.
The reflective mood.
Bennett notes that sensible philosophers across all ages and cultures agree on the primary course of study for a human being.
And it isn't math.
It isn't literature, it isn't fine art, it isn't history, and it isn't science. It is the study of oneself. Man, know thyself.
Know thyself.
He argues that the glaring absence in the average well-intentioned person's life is this reflective mood. We are so busy consuming that we simply do not reflect on genuinely important foundational things.
Like what?
Like the problem of our personal happiness, the ultimate direction our life is heading, and crucially, the relation between our stated principles and our actual daily conduct.
Happiness.
Yeah.
It is the thing everyone is frantically searching for, right? Buying apps for it, going on expensive retreats to find it.
Meditating for it.
But Bennett says most people have secretly come to believe it is unattainable. He argues that true happiness doesn't come from merely accumulating physical or mental pleasures.
It's not about acquiring things.
No, it is a byproduct of the development of reason, and specifically the act of adjusting your daily conduct to perfectly match your inner principles.
Alignment.
And to illustrate the misery of misaligned principles, he uses this incredibly dark, funny analogy, the burglar analogy.
Oh, this is a delightfully weird but striking image.
Tell me about the burglar.
He proposes that if a burglar genuinely, deeply believed in the moral excellence of burglary, if it was his sincere foundational principle that stealing was the highest good,
Okay, assuming he believes that.
then even doing hard penal servitude in a prison would just be so many happy years for him.
Wait, really? Happy in prison?
Because martyrs are inherently happy. A martyr is happy because their conduct and their principles are in perfect, unbreakable alignment.
Wow.
The permanent sorrowfulness of the average burglar, therefore, isn't the prison sentence. It is that their principles are actually contrary to burglary.
They know it's wrong.
They know stealing is wrong, but they do it anyway due to weakness or circumstance. That cognitive dissonance, that misalignment is the root cause of their misery.
So if your principles tell you to be patient, but your conduct is constantly irritable, you are going to be miserable.
Yes.
If your principles say family is most important, but your conduct says answering work emails at dinner is most important, you will suffer. The only way to fix that misalignment is by daily examination. Looking yourself squarely in the face, which he admits is a highly disconcerting sight.
It's not fun to look in the mirror.
And the evening journey home is the designated time for this. You have finished earning the day's living, and now you invite reason into your mind's cabinet room.
Let's break down his practical example of this, because it perfectly illustrates how reason fundamentally changes real-world behavior.
What's the example?
He uses a scenario we are all familiar with, getting cross with a waiter over an overcooked steak.
We have all been there, or at least witnessed someone else do it.
Oh, for sure.
You are tired, you are hungry, the food arrives wrong, and you snap at the server.
Right. It is an instinctual, reactive response. But if you have spent your evening commute cultivating the reflective mood, you consult reason before you act.
And what does reason say?
Reason will calmly remind you of several undeniable facts. First, the waiter did not cook the steak.
Fair point.
He had absolutely zero control over the temperature of the grill. Second, even if the waiter was entirely to blame for forgetting the order, getting angry accomplishes absolute nothing of value.
It solved nothing.
You lose your dignity. You look like an erratic fool in the eyes of any sensible people nearby. You unnecessarily sour the mood of a fellow human being who is just trying to do their job.
Right.
And crucially, most importantly, the steak remains burnt.
The anger didn't magically uncook the steak.
It did not.
It is a complete waste of energetic capital.
Exactly. So what is the solid, obvious gain of this dedicated daily reflection? The next time your steak is overcooked, your baseline reactivity has been altered.
You pause?
You treat the waiter as a fellow creature, you remain perfectly calm, you maintain your dignity, and you politely insist on a fresh steak. Daily reflection replaces reactive, instinctive, animalistic living with intentional, reasonable living.
It sounds incredibly simple in theory.
But it requires that dedicated, protected time on the evening commute to actually process your actions and align them with your principles.
Okay, so we have managed to wake up early. We have controlled our stray puppy minds on the morning train. We have reflected on our morals on the evening train.
We are doing great.
Now we arrive at the absolute core of the inner day. Those dedicated 90-minute evening sessions, 3 times a week.
The meat of the program.
Bennett says we need to feed this newly disciplined mind. But he knows his audience intimately. What if the listener hates literature?
Not everyone is a bookworm.
What if the idea of reading a thick, dusty book after a long day of work sounds like an exquisite form of torture?
Bennett is surprisingly permissive and practical here. He says it is perfectly fine to hate poetry or novels.
Really? He gives a pass on literature.
He does. The mandarins of literature might order you to execution for not loving Wordsworth or Shakespeare, but he dismisses that as mere academic impudence.
I love his disdain for snobs.
There are enormous, fascinating fields of knowledge quite outside the realm of literature. He starts with music.
Okay, music.
He says, perhaps you attend the Promenade concerts, which were popular, highly accessible orchestral concerts in London.
Right.
You go, you smoke your cigar, you enjoy the pleasant sounds, but if someone asks you about it, you say you know nothing of music because you can't play the Maiden's Prayer on the piano.
Which was apparently the Wonderwall of 1910 piano playing.
The Wonderwall.
Like every amateur knew how to clumsily bang it out.
Precisely. Bennett says your inability to play a physical instrument should not stop you from understanding what you are hearing.
Okay, so.
He makes a vital distinction between merely hearing a confused, agreeable mass of sound and actually listening to a marvelously balanced, complex organism.
He suggests reading a book like Krehbiel's How to Listen to Music. And this represents a massive paradigm shift for music appreciation.
It changes everything.
Once you study the construction of the orchestra, you start spotting the intricate details. You realize why the hautboy player, which is an oboe, commands higher wages than a fiddler, even though the fiddle is technically harder to master physically.
Fascinating details.
You start understanding the mathematical structure of Beethoven's C minor symphony instead of just sitting there thinking, oh, that's a jolly fine tune.
It completely transforms the experience from passive consumption to active engagement.
You're not just a sponge?
Instead of existing at the concert in a state of beatific coma, like a baby gazing blankly at a bright, shiny object, you are intensely alive.
Right.
You are picking out the French horn from the English horn. You are tracking the motif as it moves through the string section. You are engaging with the art.
That applies to other arts too, right?
The same principle applies directly to architecture or painting. The goal is systematic, vitalizing knowledge that deepens your daily experience of the world.
But let me challenge him again.
Okay, another challenge.
What if our listener is stubbornly pragmatic? What if they say, Arnold, I hate music, I hate paintings, I hate all the fine arts. Give me the real world.
A ultimate pragmatist.
Bennett's response is amazing. He effectively says, my dear sir, I respect you more and more. Because there is still a massive, enthralling field of study available to the most pragmatic person alive.
And that is
The study of cause and effect.
cause and effect. This is the perception of the continuous, unbroken development of the universe.
Like systems thinking.
It is systems thinking. It is evolution in the broadest possible sense. Bennett argues that deeply understanding that nothing happens without a cause makes a person both large-minded and large-hearted.
How does it make you large-hearted?
It actively reduces the painfulness of daily life because you stop being shocked or outraged by the curiousness of human nature. You stop acting like a bewildered stranger in a strange land.
His example here is brilliant and slightly unhinged.
Oh, the pocket watch.
He says, if you have your pocket watch stolen, it is undoubtedly a hardship.
Obviously.
But if you have dedicated yourself to the study of cause and effect, you immediately reflect that the thief became a thief due to a complex web of causes.
Heredity, environment, socioeconomic desperation.
Right. Those causes are scientifically comprehensible. So you buy a new watch, perhaps not with joy, but with a philosophical grounding that makes toxic bitterness impossible.
You don't just hold a grudge.
You treat getting robbed as an interesting sociological case study.
It is an extreme example, but it perfectly illustrates the emotional buffer that knowledge provides. He then applies this system's thinking to the most stereotypically humdrum of lives.
Like a boring office job.
A clerk in a real estate office might believe his job is incredibly boring, just copying numbers into a ledger. But Bennett says, nothing is humdrum if you put two and two together.
Okay, give me the chain of events.
He traces this incredible chain. There was a massive block of traffic in Oxford Street. To avoid it, entrepreneurs and engineers started building train lines underground, the creation of the two-penny tube subway.
Okay, the subway is built.
That new train line drastically reduced commute times, which caused a sudden massive demand for housing, he calls them wigwams, in the outer suburb of Shepherd's Bush. And that localized demand caused rents to spike in Shepherd's Bush.
So the clerk sitting in his desk, documenting a rent increase in Shepherd's Bush, isn't just dealing with a boring number on a page.
Oh.
He is witnessing the tremendous, changeful picturesqueness of life. He is seeing the direct, tangible result of traffic jams miles away. He is participating in the heartbeat of the city,
It makes it a story.
or the bank clerk. Bennett suggests they read a book called Lombard Street by Walter Bagehot, which peels back the curtain and turns the dry world of banking and finance into a breathtaking romance of human nature and collective psychology.
And if even the romance of business doesn't interest you, Bennett suggests simply walking out of your house in your slippers, walking to the nearest gas lamp with a butterfly net, and observing the moths beating against the glass.
Study moths.
Study their habits, catalog them, coordinate the knowledge. The point isn't what specific subject you choose to study. The point is to build a superstructure of knowledge on top of your daily observations. The entire field of daily habit and scene is just waiting to satisfy your curiosity if you bother to look.
So that covers the arts and the sciences of daily life, giving everyone a path forward. But what about the people who do want to read?
The readers?
The people who love books. This is where Bennett lays down some very strict and honestly kind of controversial definitions of what actually counts as serious reading during those 90-minute evening sessions.
Get ready for this.
And I have some bad news for the avid fiction readers out there, the people tearing through the bestseller list. Novels do not count.
This is often a very tough pill to swallow for avid readers.
I can imagine.
Bennett is very careful to clarify his stance. He isn't saying novels aren't serious literature or that they aren't art.
Okay, so he's not bashing them entirely.
He acknowledges that prose fiction contains some of the greatest literature in human history. But he argues that a good novel, by its very design, does not demand the necessary mental application required for cultivation. A good novel rushes you forward like a skiff down a stream. You are swept along by the plot. You arrive at the end breathless, perhaps emotionally moved, but fundamentally intellectually unexhausted.
He uses Tolstoy's Anna Karenina as the ultimate example. It is a masterpiece, but you don't have to grit your teeth, furrow your brow, and consciously strain your brain to get through it.
No, the story carries you.
The narrative momentum pulls you along. But Bennett insists that in the true cultivation of the mind, the most critical, non-negotiable factor is the feeling of strain.
Strain is the operative word.
Strain.
It is the distinct feeling of a task which one part of you is desperately anxious to achieve, and another lazier part of you is desperately anxious to shirk.
Like lifting weights.
You need cognitive resistance to build mental muscle. In the exact same way you need physical resistance to build physical muscle. You cannot get that necessary uncomfortable strain from floating down the river of a novel.
Okay, that makes sense.
Therefore, novels belong in your leisure time, your relaxation margin, not your dedicated 90-minute cultivation time.
So if novels are off the table, what provides the highest possible strain?
Poetry.
Poetry. Specifically, imaginative poetry. Bennett calls it the severest strain of any form of literature, yielding the highest pleasure and the highest wisdom.
But he knows how people feel about it.
He is brutally realistic about how the general public feels about poetry.
He has this wonderful, deeply cynical observation where he states that if you gave the average person the choice between reading Milton's Paradise Lost or crawling around Trafalgar Square on their knees in sackcloth at noonday,
I would choose the sackcloth.
Exactly. They would gladly choose the public humiliation of the sackcloth.
Yeah.
Poetry is widely viewed as a medieval torture device or an unpredictable mad elephant.
So how does he prescribe we fix this aversion? He doesn't just say, suck it up and force yourself to read Milton.
No, he's smarter than that.
He is much more strategic. He says start with an essay. William Hazlitt's essay on the nature of poetry in general. It demystifies the mechanics of the art form.
It explains how it works.
If that inspires even a spark of interest, he says, move to narrative poetry. Poetry that tells a compelling story.
Okay, like what?
He highly recommends Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Aurora Leigh, which he boldly claims is an infinitely finer English novel than anything by Jane Austen or the Bronte sisters.
A bold claim for sure.
He says, read it for the story, read it for the social ideas, and simply forget that it happens to be written in fine poetry. By the end, you might realize you don't actually hate the form as much as you thought.
And if, after making a genuine effort, poetry remains an entirely sealed book to you, he reluctantly allows you to pivot to history or philosophy.
Gibbon's Decline and Fall.
He mentions monumental works like Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire or Herbert Spencer's First Principles. The great convenience of these masterpieces, he notes, is that despite their weight, they are astonishingly lucid.
Okay.
But whatever serious reading you choose to tackle, you must adhere to Bennett's absolute, unbreakable rule of pacing.
The 45-45 rule.
Yeah.
This rule might be the most countercultural advice in the entire book.
Oh, without a doubt.
He says reading without reflection is like eating without digesting. It is mindless motion. He sharply criticizes people who fly through the shires of literature on a motor car, just so they can brag at dinner parties about how many books they read in a year.
They treat reading like a competitive race.
To combat this shallow consumption, Bennett insists that during your 90-minute session, you must read for only 45 minutes.
Just 45.
When the clock hits 45, you must firmly close the book and endure the awful bore of fatiguing reflection for the next 45 minutes.
You just sit and think.
You have to actively, painfully think about what you just consumed. How does the author's argument apply to your own life? What were the core tenets? Do you actually agree with them?
And your pace of reading will become incredibly slow.
You might only read a few pages a night, but, as he says, forget the goal. Think only of the surrounding country.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it.
If you do this, you will eventually find yourself in a lovely town on a hill. You will have actually absorbed and integrated the knowledge, not just driven past the road signs.
We are entering the final phase of his manifesto. Before our listener runs out to buy a spirit lamp, a heavily annotated copy of Marcus Aurelius, and a thick volume of narrative poetry, Bennett issues some critical warnings.
Warnings, okay.
There are psychological traps on the path to self-improvement that can completely ruin the whole enterprise. The first danger is becoming what he calls a prig.
A prig. Bennett defines this wonderfully as a pert fellow who gives himself airs of superior wisdom.
We all know one.
It's a pompous fool who has lost a vital part of his attire, his sense of humor. When you start successfully organizing your time, waking up early, and studying philosophy, it is fatally easy to become incredibly tedious to be around.
You become insufferable.
You make a discovery about how to live better, and suddenly you are gravely displeased that the entire rest of the world isn't as impressed by it as you are, and that they aren't adopting your methods.
It is the 1910 equivalent of the guy who starts doing CrossFit and waking up at 4 a.m. for ice baths, and simply will not stop lecturing his coworkers about it.
It becomes his entire personality.
Bennett's advice for this is blunt. Keep quiet.
Just don't talk about it.
The Earth rolled on pretty comfortably on its axis before you started balancing your budget of hours. Do not chatter about your new program, and do not look upon your friends with pained, condescending sadness because they are wasting their time at the pub.
Just let them live.
Taking care of your own inner day is quite enough work for one person.
The second danger he identifies is becoming a slave to the chariot of your own program. Your schedule must be respected, certainly, but it must not be worshipped as a rigid religious fetish.
You need some flexibility.
You have to maintain some elasticity in your life. He gives the example of the tragic, martyred wife who sighs and says to her friends, "Oh no, Arthur always takes the dog out for exercise at exactly 8 o'clock, and he always begins to read his history book at 8:45, so it's quite out of the question that we should join you for dinner."
Poor Arthur.
The absolute inflexible finality in her voice reveals the ridiculous tragedy of Arthur's life. He hasn't liberated himself. He has just built a brand new, highly efficient prison of self-improvement for himself.
Precisely. But the most important warning, the biggest risk of all that causes people to abandon the inner day entirely, is what he calls the policy of rush.
Doing too much.
Attempting too much too soon and failing early. Bennett says, nothing fails like failure. Oof. A failure at the very commencement of this grand enterprise can easily kill your newborn evolutionary impulse outright. It deals a desperate wound to your self-respect, and self-respect is the root of all purposefulness.
He completely rejects the romantic notion that a glorious failure is better than a petty success.
He hates that idea.
He is a massive advocate for the petty success. A glorious failure leads to nothing but burnout and abandonment of the program. A petty success builds the crucial foundation of confidence. So you have to start absurdly, embarrassingly slow.
Let the pace of the first lap be absurdly slow, but make it regular. If you try to do 90 minutes a night, 6 nights a week, you will fail.
Start with one night.
Start with one night. If your program begins to feel oppressive, if you feel that constant breathless hurry creeping back into your evenings, he suggests a brilliant psychological palliative.
What's the cure?
Deliberately waste time.
I love that.
Pass with exaggerated theatrical deliberation from one task to another. Spend 5 minutes in perfect, unbroken mental quiescence between chaining up the dog and opening your book.
Just sit there.
Sit there with the entire deliberate consciousness that you are wasting 5 minutes. It sends a powerful signal to your brain that you are the master of the schedule, not the victim of it.
Reclaim control by intentionally doing nothing. And his final piece of advice: whatever you choose to do for your 90 minutes, let it be guided by your natural inclination.
Don't force a subject you hate.
Right. It's great to want to be a walking encyclopedia of Stoic philosophy, but if you genuinely prefer the natural history of street cries, the calls of the vendors in the London streets, then study street cries.
Do what naturally engages your curiosity.
The overarching goal of this entire manifesto isn't to turn you into a scholar or a productivity machine. It is to become completely vitalized.
To be fully alive.
It is to be genuinely, deeply alive for the time you've been given, rather than just waiting for the day to end.
Well said.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started by recognizing time as the ultimate democratic daily miracle. 24 pristine hours, refreshed every morning, regardless of who you are.
The ultimate equalizer.
We redefined the structure of the day, carving out that protected 16-hour inner day where we operate as free people, not just tired wage earners waiting for the weekend.
We're aristocrats now.
We learned the practical magic of reducing friction with a spirit lamp to wake up earlier, and how to bring our wandering, puppy-like minds to heal by the scruff of the neck during the morning commute.
We explored the vital importance of the evening reflective mood, inviting reason into the cabinet room to evaluate our conduct and save us from the miserable cognitive dissonance of the burglar, or the pointless anger over an overcooked steak.
Let the steak go.
We expanded our curiosity beyond novels into music, architecture, and the fascinating, endless chains of cause and effect that make even the most humdrum job enthralling.
Study the moths.
We embraced the difficult but necessary strain of serious reading, adhering strictly to the discipline of 45 minutes of reading, followed by 45 minutes of reflection.
And most importantly, we learned to avoid becoming an insufferable prig, to avoid the rigid prison of Arthur and his dog, and to start absurdly slow to guarantee that crucial first petty success.
It is a complete, holistic, century-old blueprint for conquering the time famine that feels like it was written yesterday.
And as we close out this exploration, it leaves us with a truly provocative question to ponder.
I'm curious what you think.
Well, if Arnold Bennett firmly believed that a printed daily newspaper and quiet train ride were dangerous distractions that could scatter our focus and rob us of our mental vitality in 1910,
Oh, I see where this is going.
what does the constant algorithmic, infinitely scrolling feed of our modern smartphones do to our 16-hour inner day?
It annihilates it.
Have our miraculous modern time-saving devices actually given us any more time, or have they simply permanently outsourced our reflective mood to a screen?
That is a terrifying thought.
It might just be time to take our minds back by the scruff of the neck.
The skeleton is at the feast, waiting for an answer.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take these century-old tools, start absurdly slow, and truly enjoy your newly discovered 16 hours today.